It's Monday, the 17th of April, 2023. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 big stories in 5 minutes. Let's jump straight into it. Story number 1, representatives from some of Australia's biggest companies, including ANZ, Rio Tinto and Cochlear, are heading to China next week in the first industry delegation to visit the country in 3 years.
Yes, the thaw between Canberra and Beijing continues, and the 6-day visit next week to industrial commercial hubs like Hong Kong, Tianjin and Shenzhen are part of the first official delegation organised by the Australia-China Business Council with the backing of the federal government. The focus of next week's delegation will be potential green energy collaboration between Australian and Chinese companies, according to the Financial Review. Now, cooperating with China on climate change has been among the priorities of countries and companies seeking to re-engage with Beijing because green projects are just not as politically sensitive as investments in other areas.
There's definitely more communication between the two countries, but you wouldn't quite say friendship yet.
I think that's right. China last week agreed to review its tariffs on Australian barley, for example. There's hope that'll extend to wine, timber, seafood, beef. Also, China's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs met senior Department of Foreign Affairs and trade officials in Canberra last week. And in the last month, we've seen the bosses of Rio Tinto and BHP, as well as Fortescue Metals' Andrew Forrest in Beijing. Plenty going on. We expect Anthony Albanese to visit China later this year, though there's been no formal invitation yet. And Don Farrell, the Trade Minister, is expected to visit in coming weeks. Much of this, of course, is about economics, but there's a diplomacy part of this too. China's been working very hard with nations around the world. Emmanuel Macron from France was there last week, for example, just to try and gain a little more favour, particularly given its fight with the US at the moment.
All right, on to story number 2 now. And there were more signs over the weekend, Sean, that the housing market is bouncing with double the number of listings and a strong nationwide clearance rate.
The national preliminary clearance rate was 70% from 1,700 auctions. Now, that's up 2 percentage points from the previous week and about double the number of auctions, according to CoreLogic. The two big markets, Sydney and Melbourne, were particularly strong, with both cities recording clearance rates of 72% or more. In Melbourne, that was up from under 58% the previous week. What's even more impressive, Michael, is that these numbers came in a week which started with Easter and, of course, school holidays. The week we've just had is not normally a strong week. It's normally not very busy. It was last week. Away from the big two cities, Adelaide's clearance rate was 70%, Brisbane was 56%, and Canberra's clearance rate was 49%. Certainly positive signs for the housing market after a pretty dreadful 12 months or so.
Yeah, it's looking pretty positive. Story number 3, Sean, it's been a big week or so in the home delivery sector with Milk Run last week closing its stores. Now Coles and Uber Eats are expanding their partnership, adding 500 stores nationally so customers can receive groceries within an hour.
What's fascinating here, each delivery placed with Coles through Uber Eats will be packed and delivered by an Uber driver or rider, not Coles staff. Big difference there. The Uber driver will contact the customers if an item is out of stock. Coles started its partnership with Uber Eats for grocery delivery in 2019 as a trial, mostly along the eastern seaboard. It dropped the trial but launched a partnership with its Liquorland stores. Now it's back using Uber Eats with a slightly different process. Coles also uses DoorDash. Woolies uses Uber Eats for delivery. Very fast-growing part of the supermarket's business at the moment.
Yeah, certainly seems that way. Sean, story number 4, leaders of the world's most developed economies have reached a deal to accelerate the phase-out of fossil fuels, but failed to agree on a deadline to exit coal and left the door open for new natural gas investments.
The Group of 7 nations said it would accelerate the phase-out of unabated fossil fuels so as to achieve net zero in energy systems by 2050, according to a communiqué issued by the group's energy and environment ministers who met in Japan over the weekend. The communiqué sends an important political signal and sets the tone for energy and climate conversations for the rest of this year. Failure to agree on a timetable to exit coal may weaken resolve ahead of the UN Climate Summit in Dubai later this year. That's COP28. At that, nearly 200 nations will be pressed to phase out fossil fuels.
All right, last one, story number 5, and we're really finishing on a pretty bleak note here, Sean. There's a 27.5% chance that a pandemic as deadly as COVID-19 could take place in the next decade as viruses emerge more frequently and rapid vaccine rollout is seen as the key to reducing fatalities. This is all according to a predictive health analytics firm.
Climate change, growth in international travel, increasing populations and the threat posed by zoonotic diseases, that's diseases transferred from animals to humans, contribute to the risk, according to London-based Airfinity Limited. But according to a report on Bloomberg, if effective vaccines are rolled out 100 days after the discovery of a new pathogen, the likelihood of a deadly pandemic drops to about 8%. In a worst-case scenario, a bird flu-type virus that mutates to allow human-to-human transmission could kill as many as 15,000 people in the UK in a single day, Airfinity says. There have been 3 major coronaviruses in the past 2 decades that have caused SARS, MERS and COVID-19. We've also had the swine flu pandemic back in 2009. So perhaps this study isn't that surprising.
No, it is still a little bit grim though, isn't it?
Very grim.
Indeed. All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Monday, the 17th of April, 2023. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed on your podcast platform. That also comes with a bunch of interviews and things. Today's interview is a great one for investors looking at cryptos. And also don't forget that the Amazon Echo smart speaker range comes with Alexa built in. All you have to do is say, Alexa, play the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed podcast to catch the latest episode, and you can grab yours now at amazon.com.au. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.